Anthony Edwards leads a massive comeback. Are the Bucks back on track after a victory? And should the Spurs let Wemby do whatever they want to do? It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night. Let's go.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night. Only 3 games around the association. You might not have watched all of them, but we did. We're going to cover it all for you, including Anthony Edwards leading a massive comeback, the Bucks getting back in the win column, and Victor Wembanyama, quiet night, but we're going to talk about him in today's episode of Game Night. Today's episode of Game Night is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app, use code LOCKEDONNBA to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks run your game on Fridays. By the way, I'm your co-host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and the host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
And I'm John Karalis, at John_Karalis on Twitter, and host of the Locked On Celtics podcast.
So before we even get into the games, what'd you think about tonight's action?
Oh, thrilling. Jake, this was an incredible night of basketball. May go down as one of the best nights of basketball in American history.
Look, you had games on Monday. Every team played. Wednesday was pretty full, and we got 3 games that didn't live up to the hype on Thursday night.
Would you rather have done the Tuesday show with Monday every team playing, or this show where we will be talking about the Portland Trailblazers and the San Antonio Spurs?
So I actually have a take on the Trailblazers that we'll save for that segment. That's coming up in the third. Way to just tease ahead, John. It's like you're a pro here. But let's start with the Minnesota Timberwolves beating the Chicago Bulls 135-119. Let's go to Ben Beecan of the Locked On Wolves to get his take on this.
The Minnesota Timberwolves beat the Chicago Bulls on Thursday night by 16 points after trailing by as many as 13, down by 9 at halftime and 5 going to the fourth quarter. The Wolves explode in the fourth for 45 points and win this thing by 16. I'm Ben Beecan, host of the Daily Locked On Wolves podcast. Anthony Edwards came to play in the house that Jordan built. He finished with 33 points on 13 of 23 shooting, made 5 threes. He's now made at least 3 threes and scored at least 20 points in all 8 Wolves games so far this year. Also, the Wolves' 45-point fourth quarter is the most points any team has scored in the NBA so far this season. The Wolves bench also was big in this game. Julius Randle had 22 and 10, a double-double, and Rudy Gobert, 21 points, an easy season high for him as the Wolves piled on in the fourth quarter. The defense might have been a bit spotty early on, but it locked down in the fourth, plus the great offense, and the Wolves end up winning this thing easily. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Wolves for all things Timberwolves.
So what's your takeaway from this game? I've got one.
My first takeaway is that people in Minnesota cannot resist throwing Michael Jordan's name somehow into a conversation where Anthony Edwards exists. No matter what it is, if there's a way to do it, it's going to be done. My big takeaway here is that the Minnesota Timberwolves are a good team. The Chicago Bulls are a bad team. And the Timberwolves took 3 quarters, two quarters and some, to kind of come around to like, oh, we should be playing hard. That when the defense is struggling early against a team like the Bulls, and the Bulls got some decent shooting nights, but when it's good team versus bad team, and good team puts up a 45-24 fourth quarter, it just tells me, yeah, they were kind of like, let's see if we can kind of halfway our way to a win.
Yeah, you saw Anthony Edwards take over that fourth quarter too, 13 of his 33 points there. I thought Ben made a really interesting point about his 3-point shooting, because early in the year, it seemed like some people were like, don't do that. You're Anthony Edwards, like drive, attack, get to the rim. This is a dude who's averaging over 5 made threes per game. Dude's pretty good at that shot, right?
This is the big story here for the Timberwolves. This is his percentages year to year, starting with his rookie year. 32.9, 35.7, 36.9, back down to 35.7, and now 46.1. This is the story of the Timberwolves season so far. Anthony Edwards is shooting the lights out, and not only shooting the lights out, high volume. He's shooting 11 3-pointers a game, where his previous high was 8.4, and that was his second season. So he's been somewhere around 7 or 8 or so, and now he's up to 11. So the higher volume, I think he's trying to take some of the other kind of mid-range stuff out of his game, and it's going to be more modern. And this is as much a credit, and it's the criticism that's going around today. It's the homogenous league. You got a guy like Anthony Edwards, and it's still, yeah, you're a big driver, you're a big finisher, but he's still going to end up taking 11 3-point attempts a game. If this is sustainable, which 46% is not sustainable, but is 40% sustainable? That would be a significant bump from previous years. If he can shoot upwards, well, above league average, even, right? Above league average. But if he can shoot like 40% from 3 this year, and he's going to be shooting at that high volume, whoa, now we're changing the conversation about Anthony Edwards a little bit.
Yeah, look, they also need someone to kind of take up some of that shooting slack lost in the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. And yes, you have Dante DiVincenzo, who took 10 threes in this game, but you need it with that starting unit too to help with some of the spacing. Randall only took 4 in this game, though. He finished with 22 points, 10 rebounds. He was good in this one. And I wonder if Ant's trying to kind of make up for some of that shooting from Towns. But look, I don't know, man. If you're shooting 46%, keep taking those shots and don't listen to what anybody else says here, because that's some pretty incredible numbers. People are like, no, man, drive to the rim or take more mid-rangers. No, if you're shooting the 3 ball at 46%, take more threes.
We're at a backlash point of the NBA right now. Like the 3-point backlash is at its all-time high. And I think the Celtics had something to do with that by shooting 61, I believe, in the opening night. So the very first night of the NBA season, everybody's like, okay, let's see what we got here. And the Celtics are out here just shooting 61 3-pointers. And immediately it just became a big backlash against high volume 3-point shooting.
Yeah, big time.
But this is where we are, right? This just is where we are. So I don't know. I don't know what to say about like Dante DiVincenzo is going to shoot a lot. Edwards is going to shoot a lot. My only question is, if the shooting tails off, what will Anthony Edwards do? He's shooting great now. What happens if, let's just say for the sake of argument, December comes around and he shoots 33%? Does he still take 9 like he did tonight, 10, 11? Or does he bring it back down to 7 or 8 and turn 4 of those into drives or something else? So that's going to be the telling thing here. Is he going to try to shoot through it, or is he going to go back down? Is he just high volume now because he's making it?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. When things aren't going well, do you try and shoot through it or not? And I think that's a really great point. Let's get the Bulls perspective really quickly here before we hit the next segment from Hayes of the Locked On Bulls podcast.
The Chicago Bulls lose their 4th game in a row down to their own incompetence in the 4th quarter, being outscored by 21 points in the 4th quarter alone, giving up 45 points to the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Bulls continue to struggle with giving up 60 points in the paint while also allowing tons of points off turnovers, and the Bulls right now do not look like they are going to stop the bleeding anytime soon. For a team that kind of started off the season exceeding many people's expectations, they are more than now living down to the preseason expectations for the Chicago Bulls. And with bad performances from Josh Giddey, both defensively and scoring wise, and with solid performances from Kobe White and Nikola Vucevic, the Bulls just did not have enough defense in the times that mattered the most to be able to pull out this win. And the Bulls now sit on a 4-game losing streak with a lot of tough matchups left to come.
Funny, Jake, that in a 21-point differential fourth quarter, one team is furiously coming back and the other team says, "Oh boy, we collapsed."
I'm laughing at his lineup. They're playing down to expectations. Just what an indictment of the Chicago Bulls there. That
tough
we
times.
needed to pick a direction for a minute and don't seem to have been able to do that. Like, what an incredible line there, though. That one made me laugh. Look, also, one thing on the Anthony Edwards point that I wanted to make before, with the 3-point shooting, if you're down 13, which they were, if you're down double digits, you know how you come back from that. Make threes, right?
Yeah,
like, that's a huge part of this too, right? I think that's a factor. All right, coming up next, the Bucks back in the win column. Everything's good now, right? That's what we're going to look at coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money on the sports action that you're seeing. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win 100 times your cash. So run your game all season long over on Prize Picks, and you can now win up to 100 times your money. 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And Prize Picks is the best way to get in on the action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So you think Steph Curry will get more than 4 3-pointers in a game next week? You can take that. Anthony Edwards, we just talked about him for more than 27 points. You'd have won right now. So cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. So download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app. Use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL and NBA all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, maybe it's going your team's way, maybe it's not, you can check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I've got the Pelicans coming up here. They're plus 2.5 on the road to a depleted Orlando Magic team. I feel pretty good about that one with Zion playing pretty well. And if you want to get in on that game or any other, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You're going to get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And thank you for making a Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day, not just Monday through Friday, but every single day, 7 days a week. We are going to be covering every single game this NBA season. It's a fun way to do it. Every game, every night here. But we also have a Locked On show for your favorite team. So if you want more in-depth on any of the teams that we've talked about here or your favorite squad, there's Locked On Pelicans, there's Locked On Celtics, Locked On Wolves, Locked On Bulls, Locked On Bucks, and Locked On Utah Jazz as well. So let's get into this game here, John. The Bucks win 123-100. Let's see what Camille has to say from the Locked On Bucks podcast.
Games. The Milwaukee Bucks finally find themselves back into the win column after a 100-123 victory over the Utah Jazz at home. A much-needed win for the Bucks, who've been looking for something, looking for a spark to help turn things around. They might have really found one with Andre Jackson Jr. being inserted into the starting lineup for Gary Trent Jr., someone who played only about 8 minutes tonight. Doc Rivers said after the game that Gary Trent Jr.'s availability was limited because of back spasms in the second half, so that's something to keep an eye on. But for the Bucks, gotta feel good to finally get back into the win column. Now the Bucks get ready to head over to New York to play the Knicks on the second night of a back-to-back. So hopefully this can be a sign of good things to come for the Milwaukee Bucks, but at the very least, at least they got that first monkey off their back with the 6 straight losses.
All right, so let's play a game of real or fake. We invented this here on the Locked On NBA podcast. We didn't prep this one right now. Real or fake, John? The Bucks are back after beating the Utah Jazz.
The Jazz, the slump buster Jazz. No, the Bucks are not back. I need to see them. Look, they played 2 great quarters of defense, which is, not hard to do against the Jazz. But a 16-point quarter that they allowed, a 23-point quarter that they allowed, that's important. You take any kind of defensive wins that you can get if you're the Milwaukee Bucks, because the Milwaukee Bucks can't guard anybody. So showing that, okay, we guarded the Jazz half the game, that, okay, great. Now go guard the New York Knicks. Good luck. So I want to see
on the second night of a back-to-back, no less, right? Like that doesn't make it any easier.
That's going to be the challenge. I don't think the Bucks are going to have, like, they can score. Giannis is still Giannis. Dame is still Dame. Dame's on a heater. So
to me, that's like the big thing, right? So Giannis is Giannis, as you said, 31 points here, 16 rebounds. Like, dude's good. We don't need to worry about Giannis. It's Lillard hasn't played well this year, right? They gave up all of that stuff a year ago. He hasn't played particularly great for him. They're showing some signs of life, though, I'd say. They played Cleveland in two games combined, lost by 3 points those 2 games. Lillard had 41, 30 something, and now 34. At least there's some life there, maybe.
Some, he needed that. He needed that. He's coming off of he had 4 points against the Memphis Grizzlies, shot 1 for 12 in that game. He needed to bounce back, and bounce back in a huge way. That's from the Bucks' perspective, that's great. You need him to be Dame. And I think one of the stories of last season, aside from the sacrificing the defense and trying to turn to offense and that not working for them, the big story was that Damian Lillard never really got his footing, never really got comfortable, going through personal matters and stuff like that. Just never really worked. And it's tough. You spend your whole professional life in one city, and now you're just immediately and quickly right before the season, like, okay, now you live in Milwaukee, go. It's just difficult. And so it is going to still take some time. And so, okay, this is a great sign for them. They need that scoring from him. They need the scoring from Giannis, but they need the defense. That's going to be the only thing. You need the defense to just be mediocre. And it hasn't even been that. If you can't run at least middle of the pack defense on a regular basis, and count on Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, you want to lean into the offense? Fine, lean into the offense. Those guys can create a lot of opportunities for other shooters and all of that, but your defense has to be at least not horrible.
That's a key for them. They also, like, you look at it a year ago where they traded Drew Holiday, brought in Damian Lillard. Would it have been better to trade Chris Middleton? Could you even have pulled off that sort of deal with it, is the question too, given the injuries that he's had. But they need like vintage Chris Middleton, and it just feels like that dude's like not gonna be that again, right? Like, which is so sad to see, because he was so important for them for so long, and it just seems like injuries have really caught up to him here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he obviously was the second most important guy there. But I think he was more important even than people realize.
Yeah.
Because the ability, the backcourt ability with Holiday and Middleton to play both ends of the floor was so, like, you don't realize how critical it was until those guys aren't there. And you're like, okay, it's Drew Holiday. You're like, you're losing something, but you're gaining so much on the other side. It's almost a wash. Nah, it's not really almost a wash, because the defense that he and Middleton combined to play was so great. You think about having some porous defenders on the perimeter that puts so much more pressure on Brook Lopez. I remember, I forget who was saying it, that Brook Lopez challenges more shots in the NBA than anybody right now, which is a bad thing, because that means there's a lot of dribble penetration and he has to challenge more shots than anybody. I'm sorry. Like, I love Brook Lopez. He should not be the guy who's challenging the most shots in the league right now. So that's the problem.
if you're look, I love Brook Lopez. Dude's good, right? We know this, but he's up there in age. And if you're relying on Brook Lopez to like fully fix your defense and doing it in volume, even the best, even the best shot blockers, rim protectors, you can't do it when they are just blitzing you every single game and driving at you constantly. It's got to be in like somewhat limited actions like that. And they just don't have it. Like it's why this is what happens in the NBA, right? You go from contender to not like immediately, and it's always just genuinely shocking, right? Like it happens fast, and it feels like it's happened pretty fast to the Milwaukee Bucks. Bobby Portis, by the way, nice game off the bench, 19 points on 7 of 15, shooting 3 of 6 from deep here. What you think about the Utah Jazz here?
The Utah Jazz, I think they're the big winners in this game, because they lost.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it. Lauri Markkanen just 3 of 10, not looking like himself, 8 points. Just they want to be losing. Like they clearly locked up Markkanen into that deal early on or later in the offseason. Can't trade him. Let's be bad for a year. It feels like next year is when they're really going to start going for it.
Yeah, yeah. Anytime they can collapse in the second half, then good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So there we go. That was one of the games that we watched here. Let's get into another one that I actually think is more interesting than it probably should have been, and that's the San Antonio Spurs beating the Portland Trailblazers. That's coming up here next on Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night is brought to you by Skims. So when I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was actually pretty interested in this. My fiance has been buying Skims for a while now and is always raving about how comfortable they are. So when I knew they were going to come out with men's stuff, I was like immediately on the order train for this. I really dig the 5-inch stretch boxer brief. I just drove from Los Angeles to New Orleans here in the car, like 8-10 hours a day driving, wore a pair of Skims every single day, different ones. They were fresh. Don't worry about that. And they were comfortable. I like that stretch fabric. I don't love the cotton feeling of certain ones, but these were really great. Feels like I could wear these to the gym. I travel, I fly a lot, could easily wear these on a plane. But if you can handle like a hot car for a couple days, felt pretty good. So these are like everything I was looking for in underwear. And if you want to give them a try, you can shop Skims Men's at skims.com. That's SKIMS.com. Let them know we sent you. And after you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect holiday gifts for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever, also available at skims.com. And thank you for making it Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today and every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are here 7 days a week covering everything going on around the association. And now I'm not going to tell you to listen to something next. I'm going to tell you to read something next. And that is all of our shows, all of our Locked On shows have launched a daily newsletter here. There's a daily Locked On Celtics newsletter that hits your inbox every morning. Same for the Pelicans, same for the Bucks, same for the Wolves, same for the every team here, and they're really great. You can subscribe over at lockedondaily.com. Scroll down, click on your favorite team, pop in your email, and you're going to get a free daily newsletter that covers not just your favorite team, but the league as a whole. We've got some really great writers on staff giving you coverage you can't get anywhere else. So, John, let's wrap up the 3-game slate here with the Portland Trailblazers taking on the San Antonio Spurs. Spurs winning 118-105, and it's a quiet game from Victor Wembanyama, and they still found a way to win.
Yeah, they got some good production off the bench. Keldon Johnson, Malachi Branham. Balanced. This is what you call balanced scoring. 7 guys between 11 and 17 points for the Spurs. So that's when your main guy doesn't have it, it's great for everybody to chip in. And they shot well from 3 where the Portland Trailblazers did not. So the 16 3-pointers for the Spurs, 9 for the Blazers. That's going to be a recipe for a big fat L for the Blazers.
Yeah, look, they finally got some of their young guys going, and they've drafted a lot of these guys, and they're going to kind of start to need to make decisions on some of them in the near future, right? Like Malachi Branham's a former first round pick for him. He had 17 points off the bench. Keldon Johnson's been there for a minute, 17 points from him as well. Rookie Stephon Castle with 14 in the starting lineup. You know, they've got to figure out like who's a long-term piece and who isn't. So I do think these games are kind of important for him. Let me ask you this. Victor Wembanyama, 4 of 13. He had just 12 points on the night, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 4 steals, 3 blocks because he's a freak and he does some of the stuff. You have an interesting thought, though, about him taking some of these shots.
Yeah. So my question here, and I honestly don't know the answer here. We can play our game of real or fake. And the real or fake question or statement is that allowing Victor Wembanyama to shoot basically any shot that he wants is actually going to be counterproductive moving forward.
So I'll go real. Like I think you're going to say real too. We've seen guys fall in love with like types of games that just is fine, but isn't going to lead to like the success they want to necessarily have, right? You and I love to bring up former Celtic Antoine Walker with one of the greatest quotes of all time. Why do you take so many threes? Because there are no fours. Yeah, he might have been ahead of his time a little bit, but he wasn't a particularly good three-point shooter. And so it kind of forced him out of the league among a whole bunch of other reasons with that guy. But look at a guy like Anthony Davis, right? You know, at times in the bubble, he had that run where he was making jumper after jumper from mid-range, but we knew that probably wasn't going to be sustainable. And the Lakers have struggled with him the past couple of years because he wasn't hitting those shots at the same rate. And it's like, well, man, play closer to the basket. That's what you need to be doing. But he fell into that shot and seemed like it was a tough habit to break, right?
Yeah. And look, Wembanyama is shooting 22.6% from three this year. He shot 32.5% last season. So I am gonna lean real on this, but I'm gonna argue against myself. The real part is I don't want to see this guy fall in love with the notion of being a stretch. Like you got to be a stretch big. You know, you're 7'3", and you have this feeling of like I can play on the perimeter, so I'm going to keep taking this shot. At some point, it's going to just become we will let you do it. We're not going to. You can't challenge the shot, so we're not going to overreact to it. And if the Spurs are going to, Tim Duncan this thing, and Victor Wembanyama is going to lead them to a decade of success, I think that the shot profile is probably going to have to evolve. But the fake part of it is the Spurs are letting him kind of make the argument against himself because he's shooting a ton of 3-pointers. He's averaging, I'll get the totals up here. He's averaging 7 a game so far. And in this one, he took 6? So 2 of 6. That's a lot of 3-point shots. And if he can't figure it out, the Spurs can easily go to him and be like, hey, Vic, we let you do it your way.
Yeah, that's seasons. A good point, right?
We let you do it. We gave you 2 seasons to kind of think. They don't care. Like right now, fine, shoot 10 of them, hit 2, whatever. They're chasing the flag, right? This is the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. They want in on this. If you compare Cooper Flag and Victor Wembanyama,
please no.
It's a wrap for the league for the next 10 years. Forget it. It's over. But they can also say, hey, look, you either have to fix this shot or stop shooting it, right? You can move to the corner. You can take it sporadically. You can take it more judiciously. So while it is real that this is not the shot profile that you want from him, I will allow the fact that the building the argument that you can present to him, the inarguable you can't shoot threes, that might be a benefit down the road if he can just look at his stats objectively and be like, oh God, I just cannot figure this out.
That'd be the most Spursian kind of play, like that long play that feels like it's
Yeah.
a little bit like
It's like reverse
conniving. And it's like,
psychology.
yeah, like it's brilliantly smart is what we'd be saying here, right? Like they
Or
broke
like
him of this bad habit by letting him. That's like letting like a child smoke a ton of cigarettes or like drink a
literally
bunch of
the
booze,
thing I was just gonna say.
right?
I
And
was
then they
literally gonna make that
throw up.
same
Like
analogy.
sure, you want this? Smoke the pack here,
Smoke them
son.
all.
And then
Yeah.
he's gonna be like puking his guts up, be like, I'm never doing that again. And it's like, I'm gonna be a great parent, clearly here.
I just say you randomly start giving your kids cigarettes just to prove a point.
Look, if John said it, I've got to let it happen here.
Two things. I do not
You're
have
about to be
kids.
uninvited to the wedding.
I do not have kids, and I am Greek. I think we're born. We come out instead of crying, we come out like.
How do you think your voice is? What it sounds like?
That's
here,
right. That's right. When I was playing in Greece, it's a quick story.
Please.
When I was playing, when you sit there, they say when you're sitting on the bench, you sit next to the coach. So when somebody screws up, the coach just turns and goes, "Go get him out," so you can get back into the game. The coaches were smoking on the bench, so I moved to the end of the bench. I'm like, I don't care if I never get back into this game. I'm getting emphysema sitting next to these coaches. They were literally smoking on the bench. That's how smoking. That's how Greek smoking is.
Again, it's why your voice is what it is here.
That's right.
Like it's all years of practice in cigarettes.
It's all secondhand. It's all secondhand raspiness.
There you go. On the Trailblazers here. So quickly want to mention them, right? Like they're not going to be a good team this year, but I'm going to be honest, this team's annoying. They have a ton of young guys that want to like prove their place in the NBA and are going to be tough outs, I think, throughout the season. And they're going to surprise some people like later down the line, I think. Guys like Avdija's there. They have Simons who want to do it. Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp. Klingon is just a gigantic human. I got to see him in person this week, and my goodness, is that dude big. They're going to trade guys like Jeremy Grant, DeAndre Ayton, and have a kind of a chance to remake that roster. They're like the good type of like bad team. If you're a fan of the Portland Trailblazers, like this is great. You've got tradable veterans that'll net you some young guys and or picks and good players that like could be good, and you're playing them. I don't know. That's like a good combination for a bad team to have, I think.
The DeAndre Ayton storyline hasn't picked up any steam, but he's doing pretty well. He's racking up these.
He's not a bad player.
He's racking up these double doubles, man. He's there. There's going to be some
5x5 like Nurkic does, though.
No, he does not. No, he does not. But I feel like there's going to be some team that's going to be like, I mean, I don't know what he's able to get, what you're going to get for him. But I think at some point there's going to be some noise of like, hey, what would it take to get DeAndre Ayton?
Yeah, like you could tell he's making $34 million this year.
It's a lot of money. Yeah, it's a lot of money. But like I feel like some team he's playing well enough, and like there's got to be some. Maybe the second apron negates all of that. Maybe this just makes it so it's impossible. But I feel like there's going to be some noise. I haven't heard any of that noise yet, but
New Orleans needs a center. You could probably make a trade of like CJ McCollum work for him. That'd be about it. But that could be kind of funny and interesting to see.
That would be hilarious.
That would be something. Someone was like, yeah, I saw like one of my listeners on YouTube was coming up with a hypothetical trade. It was like, you trade CJ McCollum to the Bucks so you can pair him back with Damian Lillard and Giannis. And I was like, I don't think the Bucks are going to do that in the slightest here, but let's talk. That's the case. This is why you need to check out the Locked On Your Favorite Teams podcast, whether it's Pelicans, Celtics, or any of the other ones we've talked about. Sometimes those comment sections on YouTube are pretty fun, and there's some good stuff in there. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night. On Fridays, I'm your co-host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and the host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast.
I am John Karalis, host of the Locked On Celtics podcast. Find me on Twitter at John_Karalis.
Don't forget, there's a game night on Saturday, a game night on Sunday as well. 7 days a week here on the Locked On NBA channel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we'll see y'all next week.